Three, two, one. Hello, hello, hello. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. One, two, three. Like this. 4. Okay. All right. Hello. Welcome to the live, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Hello. Welcome. Hello, Michael. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right, so this guy, this Muslim claims that Muhammad has more miracles than Jesus, and it absolutely backfires. Shout out to David Wood and Modern Day Debate. Let's get right into it.
Miracles by the permission of Allah, the same way that Muhammad, on whom be peace, ascended into the heavens. In the verse, in chapter 17, verse 1, it doesn't say it was a vision. It says, glory be to the one who brought his servant from one place to another. Is that a miracle? Yes or no?
Patriotic Z says Muhammad didn't have any miracles according to the Quran, though.
That's true.
Central Dawa agreed. Everything cool?
No. The Prophet Muhammad, on whom be peace, like I said to David, I challenged him in our debate. I said, for every one miracle you bring of Jesus, I will bring 10 for Muhammad. For every prophecy you can bring that Jesus made, I will bring 10 for Muhammad.
You can't Central Doubt. You can't even do that from the Quran. According to the Quran, Jesus gave life to clay birds, he raised the dead, and so on. And yet, what does the Quran say about Muhammad and his miracles? I'll give you I could give you plenty of passages, but I'll just read Surah 29, 50 to 51. And they say, why are not signs sent down upon him from his Lord? Say, the signs are only with Allah, and I am only a plain warner. Is it not enough for them that we have revealed to you the book which is recited to them? Most surely there is a mercy and a reminder for people who believe. Over and over again in the Quran.
Oh, shoot. Right away, he's just like, in your own book, it says that Muhammad doesn't even do miracles.
Muhammad is challenged. Why don't you have miracles like the people who came before you? Over and over again, he makes excuses. Oh, it's because people in the past rejected them. That's why I don't have miracles. Oh, it's because I brought the Quran. That's my miracle. And you have the nerve to say in a book where Jesus is born of a virgin. Jesus speaks miraculously at birth. Jesus raises the dead. Jesus cleanses the lepers. Guys, I'm not talking about the Bible here. I'm talking about the Quran. Jesus does all these things, and then Jesus is miraculously rescued and so on. That there's 10 times as much about Muhammad, who, according to the book you're quoting, performed no miracles except saying, listen to my lovely Arabic poetry.
David, you said Muhammad did no miracles according to the Quran, right?
Yep.
Okay. According to the Quran, did Muhammad ascend into the heavens?
In a vision is not a miracle.
No. In the Quran, according to the Quran, did Muhammad ascend into the heavens?
As a vision, sure.
Okay, is that a miracle?
That's not a miracle.
It's not.
Okay. A vision?
In the Quran, does it say that Muhammad split the moon?
No. Show me Muhammad split the moon. It says the moon is cleft asunder. Now check your commentaries. They say they don't know what this is talking about. It's because of later hadiths that some people interpret it that. They also say it could be a sign of the end times.
Yeah, David, according to chapter
your own commentators don't agree that that's about Muhammad.
That's crazy. Yeah, and I would say that's not performing a miracle. Having a vision is not performing a miracle. If I have a vision, it's not like I'm performing a miracle. I'll be like, yeah, of course God did that. And then you might say, well, God actually performs miracles through people, but he didn't even do that. It's wild. He didn't like pray for someone to be healed or something. Hello, Jonathan. Welcome.
According to chapter 17, verse 1, glory be to the one who took his servant by night from Masjid al-Aqsa to the sacred mosque, right?
Yeah.
And then he was lifted, etc., etc. That wasn't the vision.
Yeah, it was.
That was literal. That literally happened.
He never left his bed.
No, David, that literally happened. According to the Islamic paradigm, did it actually happen?
No. No. It was a vision.
According to who?
According to, what are you talking about?
Yeah, according to who?
He never left his bed. He never left his bed. So what's that mean? It means it's in his head. And at the very least, it means there's nothing that could confirm it. When Jesus is raising the dead, there are all these people standing around watching. When Jesus is speaking as a baby in the Quran, there are these people watching. Who is there who can confirm? Who is there to confirm that this is actually a miracle, and that Muhammad's going around on his flying donkey and seeing all these things? Who can confirm?
Yeah, David. So Jesus does all of those miracles by the permission of Allah, the same way that Muhammad, on whom be peace, ascended into the heavens. In the verse, in chapter 17, verse 1, it doesn't say it was a vision. It says, glory be to the one who brought his servant from one place to another. Is that a miracle? Yes or no?
No. I'll give you a chance to answer, David, and then we probably go to...
No. If anything, that's still not a miracle. It's just him transporting, apparently. And what David gets into is so funny. He's like, well, then why did he completely explain what Jerusalem looked like? Completely false. Is another thing.
The next question.
No, it's a vision.
This one,
the Quran doesn't say it's a vision.
And by the way, it's not even a correct vision. You can read Muhammad's descriptions of what he saw in this vision. It does not line up with what was actually there in Jerusalem. So there's no.
We will jump to the next one.
Okay, thank you. The Quran says it's literal. Thank you very much.
How, and this is, I think they're sincere. It's not a snarky question. They say, how is Muhammad's presence in the Bible relevant? Why do people care so much about this? Which, by the way, people do care. People have been, I don't know if I've ever seen so much engagement. The live chat has been at 1,000,000 miles an hour. People really do care, and they're asking why.
Yeah, it's important to, number one, you have the Bible, a book full of prophecies and prophetic visions and poetry that talks about, end times, I think it would be a shame if the Bible actually didn't prophesy about Islam, the Prophet Muhammad, his companions. I think that it would be lackluster if the Bible didn't do that. Now, clearly, anybody, you can pick the Bible up as a layman. I was born and raised a Muslim, but as a layman, when I read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, you can clearly see that there is a parallel and that there is something that's going to happen in Arabia. Something major is going to happen in Arabia. And you need to figure out what that is. And that's the coming of Prophet Muhammad with the kingdom of God. And if he is the one prophesied in the Bible, then his teachings is the final authority, just like Quran 548 says the Quran is the supreme authority. You would have to accept it, i.e., everyone should be a Muslim.
Dave,
as far as as far as me, the only reason this is important is because you have the most obvious false prophet in history coming along.
He's like, because you have the most obvious false prophet in history, which is true. If anything, Jesus is like, beware of false prophets. That has to be the most false prophet in the history for now. It's over 1 billion people following him. Like, when you really think about it, when the Bible talks about beware of false prophets disguised as sheep's clothing, like, beware of wolves disguised as sheep's clothing, like, that's the most obvious. But obviously, then there's a lot of atheists, false religions out there, but that has to be the most. That's crazy. This guy is Central Dawa. That's his name.
Speaking to a bunch of people who didn't know what's in the Torah and the gospel, a bunch of pagan Arabs, and saying, hey, I'm in that book. I'm in that book. Doesn't say where, just says he's in the Torah and the gospel. But he just says, hey, there are prophecies about me in that book. And here we are 14 centuries later, and the best that Muslims have been able to come up with as far as Muhammad in the Bible is, according to Central Dawa, Daniel 2, which Muhammad didn't even talk about, didn't say that he's in there. And so that's the reason that it's important, is that it's the basis for, it's one of the bases for Muhammad's claim to prophethood. If we examine the Bible and we don't find Muhammad, or we go to the Bible and find that Muhammad is a false prophet, then, hey, he's the one who appealed to it. And so we'd have to say that his claims come crashing to the ground.
Yep. And that's one of the biggest problems when the Quran and Muhammad say, the Bible confirms me, I'm in there. And then when we go to the Bible, where in the world is he? Where in the world is he? They literally try to find the name by miraculously digging through certain scriptures, and you can't. And one of the verses that they somehow think it's Muhammad is in the book of Songs of Solomon. Songs of Solomon. Yeah. Like, guys, we know who Songs of Solomon's about. And it's not about Muhammad. It's about a lover. Literally. What in the world? It's a new testament. It did exactly what the Christians did to the Old Testament. No, but it's not even. Muhammad claimed to know what the Bible was and is to people who had no idea. And they believed him. Jesus, there's so many things that Jesus fulfilled from the Old Testament to the New Testament. That's was absolutely crazy. Muhammad doesn't fulfill anything from the Bible, besides maybe being a false prophet. Jesus literally does things that were described in Isaiah, and it's mind-blowing. You can't even wrap your head around it. I can't. It's to think someone wrote something. Yes, this is live. And to think Huh? Yikes. And to think yeah, Mormons completely had the wrong ideology too, though. Yes, Muhammad is not a god. He is. Muhammad's mom was a Catholic? What? What are people saying here? That is completely not true. That's wild. People are hilarious. I hope everyone's having a great day, though. It's Valentine's. Hopefully, you guys are being around people you love and appreciate. Any of you guys going on Valentine's dates? As a all right. Matthew 24:24 says, "For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform great signs and wonders, so as to deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones." And I wouldn't even say Muhammad really did much signs and wonders. The only thing he claims is to encounter an angel come to him and hear from God. So guys, I encourage you to know that Jesus is the one true God. He's the only way to the Father. Through him, you will have a relationship with the Father. No, that could not be Jesus, because this is Matthew speaking. This is from Matthew trying to quote Jesus saying this. Jesus is the one saying this. Beware. So that's crazy. In the description below, there'll be a link to help you to decide to follow Jesus for the first time. I encourage you to do that today. And also, guys, if you want to support me, you can do that. Join the membership on the YouTube program. All right. We have lots of fun videos to react to today, guys. All right. What did people say in the chat here as I get this ready? All right. Okay. All right, here we go. Welcome to another Matt Dillahunty reaction video. It's wild, it's crazy. Matt Dillahunty says that humans don't have intrinsic value, and no one really has an intrinsic value, and you only have value because you give something value, essentially. So let's get right into it. Shout out to Unbelievable. Here we go. And I have a Bible verse to tie everything together. Let's go.
Humans?
Well,
Matt's preferences. It's a fact in the way 2 + 2 = 4 is a fact as far as you're concerned.
Yes. See, and that I don't
quite so much for you.
I don't agree with. It is certainly there are things that we're going to agree on that I don't know how you could ever demonstrate that this is in fact like true, like some intrinsic truth about like, for example, I think human lives have incredible value. I don't think they have any intrinsic value. I don't think the universe cares at all about human life. They have value because they have value to us.
And who's us?
Humans.
All humans?
Well, cognitive able humans who are able to consider the proposition of whether or not they have value.
Which is the strong, and that's my problem, is that it becomes an ever shrinking circle of humanity that we have, and it's the strong who rule over the weak.
Well, the characterization of evolution as being strong over the weak, I would argue isn't necessarily accurate, but it's also because there's no decision there. It's whatever survives, survives. And what is strong in one sense, a weakness may become a strength depending on the situation. That's what evolution does. It's not like, ooh, me, He-Man, you weak, I'm going to kill you type thing. Maybe, for example, sickle cell anemia provides protection against certain things. And so while it may be under certain circumstances, there's a reason why animals develop camouflage and other changes. It's because of the
why in your view,
environment.
was it wrong for, I'm sorry to invoke Godwin's law, even though we're near the end of the program, why was it wrong for Hitler and the Nazis to, euthanize disabled people and gay people and people that they felt were outside of their circle of who they considered to be human? What was the kind of...
I'm not convinced they considered them outside the circle of what they considered to be human. They had a view that these were somehow inferior humans. I think they would all acknowledge they were human, just that they were somehow inferior or less diverging. Yeah, race. Things like that.
Master race.
So it's one of those things where people say...
Because a lot of people would say Hitler was wrong about a fact there, whereas from what I'm wondering, and we're getting to the issue of, is there this objective moral value to humanity? And in a sense,
it reminds me of the people who argue that, hey, slavery is really good for the slave owners. And so if you're a slave owner, you can look at this and say, hey, slavery is a good thing because it benefits me. The problem is that when you look at the larger picture, it's actually not necessarily good for the slave owners. And beginning to recognize that every member of society affects potentially every other member fundamentally changes, and it shifts our in-group, out-group dynamic, so that when Hitler goes after the Jews for whatever religious reasons he had, for whatever superior, uber guy reasons he had, that's fundamentally different from whether or not killing them makes society worse or better.
Okay. But you can't say that just because something makes something better or something worse that's not what inherently makes something valuable. You have to be willing to condemn someone completely because there is something completely wrong with euthanizing people who are a little bit slower than you, even disabled people, gay people, different religions than you or ethnicities than you. That's still intrinsically wrong because they're made in the image of God.
And it's kind of this thing of, oh, this is what I think makes us better, which is independent from what actually makes us think better. Nobody, not Sam nor I nor anybody, is suggesting that if we begin with an agreement on well-being as a foundation, that there aren't going to be things that we think we have the right answer about and find out we were wrong.
At that stage, then, it would seem like instead of having World War II, we would have a symposium in which the Nazis would present their papers and others would present other papers, and then we'd have a panel and we'd discuss them and we'd try and thrash it out. At what stage do you say
their vision for updating, for evolving, for having a master race, at what stage do you say that is morally unjustified, and therefore there is a just war that can be fought against them?
What? I don't know that there's an answer for that apart from assessing the individual situations, which is what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have to rely on a God for it.
Well, we relied on 1939 years of Christian understanding of what is the good life, and the good life is the sacrifice of the strong for the protection of the weak, and Hitler was doing the exact opposite of that, and so it was very obvious to people in that sense, the evil of the Nazis, and they went and fought a just war against it. But,
sure. So it was Christianity that was the credit for ending the Nazi regime, and why people, not even Judaism.
No, it was Christianity that had shaped the West and its moral sensibilities, such that Nazism appeared to them as very obviously the very reverse of the way of the cross.
So this is something that you just can't argue with, because it's just an assertion.
You can't deny that, though, because Christianity has shaped Western society, and that's why so many people are saying that's wrong. It's the exact opposite. Nazis believed to get rid of the weak, to make the stronger survive and become even stronger. But Christianity is to help the weak, lift up the weak. The strong lay themselves down for the broken.
From Glenn's perspective, because if we come up with something that is good, we're borrowing from Christianity. There's no way to not be accused of borrowing, because Christianity was around before. And if you find something that was before Christianity, well, that was foreshadowing Christianity. Because the God that he believes in has been there forever. Mm-hmm. So anything true and good that was pre-Christ was God foreshadowing it. And anything is after, it's somebody borrowing from it. There's no response to this, and there's also no way for him to demonstrate that that's what's happening.
Is that a fair criticism, Glenn?
Well, I think we've said from Old Testament to New Testament, we've said from Genesis 1, I totally believe in the same God from the beginning. But I think what is the unique thing about the Christian story is you've got the sacrifice of the fittest for the survival of the weakest. You've got this way of the cross. You've got this way of Jesus, which is unlike the Greco-Roman world. It's unlike the Persian world. It's unlike the Babylonians. It's unlike the Muslim world. It is very like what secular humanists now say about inclusion and welcome and diversity and bringing people to the center and caring for the weak and the
poor.
If you're
very selective about what you read, you know, it'd be really nice about Christianity if it were the nice unique feature of Christianity was if it could be demonstrated to be true. Mm-hmm. That would be a unique feature among religions, which would be very nice.
Well, we had the God who was the master, came down, became the slave. He paid the slave price.
I know the story.
Yeah.
You can't demonstrate it's true.
Well, we're living in the effects of it. We're living in the ripples of the after effects.
You can't prove that's true either. That's just how you're viewing it. I don't think we're living in the rippled effects of people who believe that to be true, which is independent from whether or not it is true.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've all got our different standards of what would qualify as evidence.
Which is why, and this is the thing. This is why I keep saying that I have yet to be presented with an objection from religious, an objection to secular morals that religions solve, and it's not. God could fix this. If there is a God, God could fix this just like that. Just like he could have said, thou shalt not own another human being as property. Instead, he was more concerned about wearing mixed fabrics and whether or not you should eat shrimp, evidently.
I mean, it's a conversation about the old covenant that we can have.
Right, but I think you're also missing, though. There was a reason for that. It's not just because it was immoral to eat shrimp. Maybe because they were more worried about diseases and being unclean, as in they want people to survive. And that was the thing. It was more of a legislation going on in the Old Testament for those things so that they could survive during those times. It was different than the Ten Commandments. The Way, hello everyone. Hello, The Way. Glad you're doing here. Glad you're doing well. Glad you're here.
but the Old Covenant's called old for a very good reason. What I've been saying again and again is...
Why would there be multiple covenants? Why can't God just say, here's the way things are?
That's just the law. That's just the law. The law does say, here's the way things are. But as we've both admitted, humans get things wrong. Like what we need is grace. What we need is the God who is the lawgiver to actually come and save us, to actually come and forgive us for all the different ways that we get things wrong.
So I don't think I need a God to come and save me or forgive me. I think I need a God to come down and demonstrate that he exists.
Mm-hmm. The God who comes down, in the Christian sense, is the God who becomes incarnate. But a number of times, Matt, you've used the word of God being sort of a super being, or I don't know, what was the phrase you used? Anyway, a super being, which I imagine to be something kind of within the created order, and who might appear in a cloud and that sort of thing. Are you talking
about today? Because the only time I talked about super being was when we were referencing Nazis.
No, super. Anyway, forgive me.
But carry on.
God is not one more item within the created order. He is the source of being, and so for you to say, why isn't God showing himself? It's a bit like Juliet saying, where is Shakespeare? Like in one sense, where isn't Shakespeare? Okay,
it's kind of the opposite of that, because in that category you have a fictional character asking, where's the real one? In this one you have the real character asking, where's the fictional one?
Oh, but are you the fictional one?
I'm not. I'm the real one.
I'm a real boy.
As far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Wow.
And yet you did not give life to yourself.
Isn't one of Glenn's contentions, though, in a sense, that if you're looking for evidence for God, we find it by looking at the fact that we have this intrinsic view that humans are equal, and that isn't something that we can just deduce from science. Science doesn't have anything particularly to say to our moral values.
Because it's not a truth. It's not intrinsically true. It's not like 2 + 2 = 4.
It's not a mathematical truth. In terms of morality, are you an objective? Do you believe in objective moral values, or like?
Not the objective foundation, but the objective assessment with regard to the foundation. I think well-being is the best that we've come up with.
But in that sense, so science, as far as it can give us a morality, like Sam Harris says, is once we've agreed what the goal is, and then
right. If you agree on what the goal is, then you can.
There's no ultimate sort of There's no ultimate foundation saying this is the way we should all. This is the goal we should all aspire to. But presumably, Glenn, you believe there is some kind of ultimate thing that we're made for, something we're about, a grand narrative we're living in,
right?
And the fact that we recognise that somehow within ourselves, evidence for God in your view?
You can make a moral argument for God's existence. Yes, I do believe God is love, and the good life is to live in love, and I believe that not just Christians can recognise this, and not just Christians do recognise this.
Well, we can do the same thing. So this thing of the fact that we seem to have a desire for meaning, purpose, value, all of those things, he'll use as evidence for the God, because that serves as an explanation for it. I can do that with that exact same example. The reason that Glenn sees God as the justification for that is because he's uncomfortable with the possibility that there isn't an explanation for it, or that this isn't some sort of universal truth. So a preference for, I want there to be intrinsic human dignity, gets you to, hey, if there was a God, there would be human dignity because this God is guaranteeing it. And so that same circular preference is there. I'm just eliminating both of them and saying, I'm going to go ahead because I care about human beings and I value human beings because I am one, and say whether there's a God or not, this is what I'm going to go for. And if there's a God that has a better way, they can demonstrate it. Why isn't a Damascus Road experience good enough for everybody?
So the moral argument for God's existence is not that we need some kind of arbitrary moral figure who has some whims and he will enforce them at the point of hell, and therefore it would be better if we want to live in a moral world to believe in such a God. The moral argument for God's existence is there is an objective realm of moral values, and the explanation for that objective realm of moral values is not going to be a material cause, because morals are not material things, right? Moral values are not reducible to just biological reality, and thank God for that, because biological reality is the survival of the fittest, okay? But moral values are something distinct from biological values, natural values. You cannot get from those natural values to the ethical values. You can't get from an is to an ought. And you sure can't get from preferences to an ought. You can't get from a like to an ought.
Of course you can. You can always get from preferences to an ought.
No, you can only get from preferences to another preference. It just becomes another preference just backed up with force.
The problem is, well, all right, we're not going to necessarily. So first of all, I don't think we disagree on the is-ought dilemma. But as soon as you get into preferences, that's the objection. The reason you can't get from an is-ought is that you have to inject a preference. It's injecting the preference that gets you to the ought. I would like to live in a world where this happens, therefore I ought to do that. Mm-hmm. The objection on the is-ought thing is this thing. If I start with the foundation of I would like to, is not a problem with what it leads to, but why should I like to?
With the power, I suppose, is what I'm getting. Glenn is saying, if the person in power, say the Hitler, simply has a very different conception of what the best is for his life compared to your life, then do you have any moral, if you like, force to say you're doing something wrong? Isn't he just going with his preferences as opposed to your preferences?
Yes.
So what is it that's up here that says those preferences are better and those preferences are worse? What is that?
This is the objection that's often launched. So I could sit down with Hitler. I wouldn't, because he's dead. But I could sit down with Hitler, and if we could find the thing that we agree about, that we care about, we can then demonstrate which one of our preferences are in conflict with that. Because what we do as human beings is often delude ourselves, and we look at our preferences and assume they're right. But they're going to conflict with something foundational, which is basically at the beginning of that superiority to secular morality talk. I talked about how you could begin with, let's say, 3 foundational premises. Life is generally preferable to death. Health is generally preferable to sickness. And pleasure is generally preferable to pain. None of them are universally true. Sometimes pain is preferable. Sometimes death may be preferable, which is why I support death with dignity for people who no longer have any hope of a quality of life and with their individual autonomy and control over their own life. But you can begin with those and you can build something. But you can start with anything. You could start with death is better than life, and what you get to is extinction. Sure. And so if I find something, I think Hitler probably, I mean, there's the old joke, Hitler probably loved his mother too. Hitler probably valued human life, just had justifications for excluding certain others.
Right. And you think you could reason Hitler into...
I don't know that I necessarily could.
Why
because
wouldn't he
there are
reason
people,
you into his way?
It might be. I'm not.
But this is the problem, though. If someone in authority in a society completely makes objective truths to say, my way is better, and the way that they think is better is completely annihilating a certain people group, it's just subjective. It's just subjective, and you have to say, well, that's your preference. My preference is this, but everything's subjective, so it doesn't really matter. But if there are inherently things that are objective and are true and things that are evil and things that are good, you have the right to stand up to against the societal norms and say that is wrong. Hitler was wrong.
I'm not saying that that's not necessarily the case. I'm saying if you can show that what your actions are and the things that you're justifying are in conflict with a foundation that you agree with, that's where the problem is.
Right. And what if it's the establishment of the master race? Because if the fittest do survive, then wouldn't it be nice if the fittest should survive? Like, we take that hop, skip, and a jump, and
sure. And then you ask, what criteria are you using to determine fittest?
And again, we're having a symposium when we should be fighting a war, and this is.
No, we should always be having a symposium so we don't have to fight wars. Why would anybody ever say we should be fighting a war?
You sound like Neville Chamberlain. You know, I found peace in our time with Hitler because I'm going to sit down with him.
Well, and I'm sorry that advocating for reasoning rather than blowing crap up is so anathema.
I think we tried to reason with him.
I'm not saying. See this. Okay, here's where the confusion is. I'm not saying, after the war started, send Matt in and he can sit down with Hitler.
He's very clever.
We're using a precise example to talk about a more abstract one, which is essentially, let's say you and I disagree on, you want to take some action. You want to exterminate some portion of the population. The process that I'm advocating for is for us to figure out what shared foundation we have, if any, which We'll find something shared and show which one of us is more in conflict with and which one of us is more in keeping with that foundation. Is it always going to be the case? No. But you asked how you would actually solve that, and I would. And if it didn't work, I'd kill him.
and if well-being, just very vaguely just defined, if well-being is the metric that we're using, and if Hitler could say, "Oh, we are so much better off without the disabled," you have no idea. You know, we're soaring our industry, our numbers are through the roof. Our well-being is doing incredibly well once we eliminate the sick, the weak, the handicapped. Is he right at that point?
Well, that's when you go through and you talk about what data are you looking at to define well-being, because
what data?
Yeah.
You're having that conversation about the data because he's just told you I've eliminated the handicapped.
It's not like I'm no.
Okay, because it is happening right now. Okay, there is a Down syndrome population, for instance, that's being eliminated globally right now, and we're having a conversation about it. Okay, and I think it's better to have a conversation than to blow people up and all that sort of stuff. But it's a very live issue. I mean, it's not just the Godwin's rule.
I'm just going with the example that you say Hitler comes to me and says, "You wouldn't believe how much better our society is off now that we're eliminating these people." Then you have to go back and look at it and say, "Okay, what have you lost? Is your society?"
No. I would say you don't say anything and be like, stop it. Quit eliminating people because that is bad. Oh, my goodness. Stop. It has nothing to do with one way or the other. That's what you have to say. It has nothing to do with it. That's his problem. He's saying, well, let's look at it. Let's see if it really is beneficial. What if that was you? What if someone thought you were disabled?
Better. And are you just looking at the short term? Did you, in fact, how do you know that you didn't lose a cure for disease? How do you know that you're not worse off because it has fundamentally changed your psyche? How do you know that you're not worse off because you've lost art, because you've lost human connection? It's not just, see, this is one of the problems that you could point out to people that are going down there. Well-being is not just what's my financial well-being.
Aren't those people's lives worth something, even if they didn't produce a cure for cancer or great works of art? Even if they just, sat around and consumed all the resources that all the able-bodied people were doing.
If somebody sat around and did nothing but consume, I don't know how you could consider that as adding value. You have to point to something where they're adding value to society.
Is that what?
Because they have intrinsic value. They're made in the image of God. You shouldn't ever eliminate someone just because of them not achieving a certain amount of things. That's so important to remember and know. If you think you have to do something amazing to add value, that's a problem. Not everyone will do something completely, absolutely amazing. That doesn't mean they don't have value, though.
They have to achieve, they have to add value. But they don't have value.
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying when I say that there's no intrinsic value to it, but that I value human life, and that everybody, almost everybody.
But who's I? You, Matt Dillahunty.
I'm speaking specifically for me, but also
but if
I
someone
think
else doesn't. You try to reason them out of it, but
what? Yes. What do you? Okay. See, you sit there. And you, Okay, let's try it. I don't value human life. Change my mind.
Look at the Nazis. Look at that vision of humanity.
I don't care. I don't value human life. Change my mind.
You have yourself a humanity that has dignity. You might not believe it right now.
I don't. Change my mind.
I'm trying to change your mind by saying without achievements, without attributes, without contributing a penny of money, without expending a calorie of effort.
I worry, by the way, that this is going to get cut as if this is really me saying this when it's not.
And I'm counseling you or something. Yeah, I'm your therapist.
I don't even understand why this point is remotely contentious.
What's your point here, though? That if you simply choose not to believe humans have value, then nothing that he's going to say is going to change your mind.
Right, telling me that there's a God or a Jesus, that's not going to necessarily change my mind any more than my line of reasoning.
So what's your point then, Glenn? Because
my point is the changing of the mind is not the most important factor that's going on here. It's the immorality of eliminating a whole people group. That's probably a little bit more important.
And I think
someone's openness. We're talking about, it's a conversation.
We're talking about someone who doesn't value human life.
Yes.
Not what they've done, but what they think.
Yes.
Yeah. You have to figure out a way to change their mind
And the best way we've discovered over 2,000 years is to tell a story about the God who becomes the weak and despised and the marginalized and the single cell in Mary's womb.
And I think we can do better God's than telling a story.
But you think, but what evidence?
No, you can't, because everything that you value will not help someone have more value in human life. They won't see more value in human life by your morality, by your ideology. How can you do better? The best way is because of that story, that true story.
Well, give it a shot. There's no reason to think it's not worse. It's any worse.
Except all the scientific studies that are cited.
Brings us nicely to the end of the show. And I'm just going to ask that question one last time. Can atheism deliver a better world in your view, Matt?
I have no idea. And that's genuine. I think that there are things that if you take the good, wherever you find it, religion, non-religious, philosophical thing, take those things, keep them, get rid of the baggage. How could we not be better off?
Mm-hmm. And your final thoughts on that one too?
Well, I guess what follows from atheism? I mean, atheism, just a lack of belief in a God. I don't think any kind of moral system necessarily falls out of that. If we're biological survival machines clinging to an insignificant rock, hurtling through a meaningless universe towards eternal extinction, what follows? One thing that might follow is nothing. Another thing that might follow is anything. And therefore, I think, Matt's venture is very much a venture of faith. We want to create more atheists, or at least create more skeptics about the idea of religion, when everything we know about the utility of religion is that it's a net gain, a net win to society, and when the consequences of getting rid of this story, especially this story of the God who became weak, is to have a certain callousness to the whole rest of society. And I think that meta-ethical issue will play out in negative ways about how we treat the least and the last and the lost.
And I agree with him that atheism doesn't necessarily lead to anything, which is why I keep advocating for secular humanism. But when you say that everything we've learned, religion has been a net gain, I'm not convinced.
Well, look,
Wow. That's wild. The Christian religion brings so much order to chaos, I would say. To actually follow what Jesus did, to lay your life down constantly for the others, to give people life and value, then I think we would be great. If everyone followed the 10 Commandments, no one stole, committed adultery, no one murdered, life would be pretty awesome, okay? But no one wants to actually live by that, I would love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Okay, but think about society now. No one's killing witches now. No one is killing witches now. That is for sure. Okay. Jesus replied, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the commandments of the prophets are based on these two commandments. Imagine if everyone loved their neighbor as themselves. Imagine if everyone put others first and laid their life down for others so that they could be saved. Imagine that. That would be absolutely amazing. So guys, I encourage you all to put Jesus first. Know that he loves you. He's longing to have a relationship with you. That will be the best decision you could ever make. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I encourage you to like this video and subscribe if you haven't. And if you never decided to follow Jesus, I encourage you to click the link below. It will help you to decide to follow Jesus for the first time. It will be the best decision of your entire life. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I encourage you to keep on putting Jesus first. Yeah, I think secular and atheism. Yeah, I agree. All right, this is the end of my live. I gotta have things go short today. Oh no, my stream is buffering a lot. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why. I'll try to get things fixed, I guess, later. But I love and appreciate you all, and I'm gonna pray. And hopefully you guys have amazing Valentine's. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. I pray that you bless everyone here. Help them to know that they're loved by you and you have given them intrinsic value. Thank you so much for all that you do. Be with them, lead and guide them, and help them to have an amazing weekend. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, love and appreciate you all, and I will see you next week. I will see you next week. Or next Monday, on Monday. Have an amazing weekend. Bye, guys. Appreciate you all. Love and appreciate you. By Corpse, by the Way, by Resident Evil, by Dwight the Great White. That makes sense. All right. Bye, everyone, and YouTube Shorts.